There were no actions taken in closed session. Attendance roll call. Clerk Helkeship.
Here.
Trustee Lopez.
Here.
Trustee Reed.
Here.
Trustee Galindo.
Here.
And President Maxfield is here. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Paula, we probably ought to add student rep. We're still working on our new board doc system, so there's some kinks to work out. 3.5, any changes to the agenda? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Student rep? Here we go. All right. 3.6, district mission statement. We are a collaborative, culturally rich educational community where rigorous and innovative curriculum prepares our students to be successful contributors to our global society. 4.1, recognition. The Board of Education recognizes students, employees, or members of the community who have received recognition for academic or athletic achievement or who have made significant contributions of any kind to the district. The following individuals will be recognized, and Principal Lemon will talk about that.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is my favorite part of the agenda, is celebrating the efforts of our community, because it definitely does take a community to have a successful school. This month, we would like to celebrate Molly Bastian, who's seated right over here. And to give you a little bit of background, she has two daughters who attend CES. And this is her second year as the PTA president. She last year was so dedicated for our second annual Jogathon. She got Mayor Chris Canning to come and be the basically the announcer during the laps, and he definitely energized the students. And in the meantime, she did that after having to have ankle surgery. So she came out with crutches and everything to support our students. She has been real pivotal in creating activities to support our students at CES, which includes having the Jogathon, which the students are very engaged in. We also have movie nights, which are important to our kids because we don't have a movie theater in town, and it gives them a nice nighttime activity to do. And also working towards now our third Halloween Safety Carnival, which will happen again this year over at the Boys and Girls Club. So it is an absolute pleasure to work with her as the president of PTA. And I just want to thank her for all of the efforts she has given to our school.
Congratulations. Thank you. Photo op.
Appreciation.
Thank you again. Public business from the floor, non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the board on any item regarding board business that is not on the agenda. Without taking action or entering into a dialogue with the public, board members may briefly respond to statements made or ask clarifying questions about topics posed by the public. Your matter may be referred to administration. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. Anybody? Didn't see any cards? All right. Moving on. Reports, correspondence, discussion items. 6.1 LCAP and budget approval letter.
This is just the letter that you receive each year from the County Office of Education that says that our local control accountability plan and our budget was approved for this coming school year.
Okay. Any comments, questions? No. Moving on. Okay, this is another fun one. 6.2, Calistoga Education Foundation Grant Acceptance. You're not Lisa Morgan.
I'm not. My name is Sharon Sir, and Lisa last name. Thank you.
Yeah.
I represent Calistoga Education Foundation. I'm the vice president on board, and also serve as the grant coordinator during the year. And we are very happy to partner with you, the board, in providing the best academic experience for kids in Calistoga. This year we received, and you guys have the spreadsheet.
Yep.
Over 73,000 in grant requests, and we granted just over 42,000, which remains within our allowable thing to be sustainable. I think we're up to like 43,000 is about the max that we can grant currently. We appreciate the enthusiasm, planning, and dedication evident in the grant applications we received this year. The grants have been reviewed by the site administrators, the CEF grant committee, and approved by the CEF board, and we now present them to you as the final step for your endorsement before we send out the approval letters tomorrow, hopefully. And if there are no questions for me, I'll be happy to see that. Thank you.
We appreciate the support.
Okay.
So, yes, so, good. Thank you very much. All right. .3 facilities update. Director Rhodes.
All right, so we're going to go over a few things for facilities. It's been a little while since I presented. I got a few updates to give you. First is, over the summer, we redid the CS Portable. Boys and Girls Club lived there for, I don't even know how many years, but we hadn't done a whole lot of work in there in the time they were in there. So I know that we needed some space at the elementary school, and we ended up putting the PE class in there. So some of the things we did was new interior and exterior paint, plumbing fixtures, carpet linoleum. Sorry, you can't really see the writing there, but we did new AV equipment, the intercom, a concrete pathway, ADA ramp repairs. A pretty good amount of the stuff we did in-house, just trying to save some money. We did the interior and exterior paint ourselves, the plumbing fixtures, the AV equipment we did, saved a considerable amount of money. It kind of took up a lot of our maintenance department's time, so I don't know that we may not bite off so much next time. But, so it turned out well. The PE teacher seems to like it. Next is
Chris, before you go on, just
Yeah.
a quick question. So, I mean, you know, we painted it and we did all, well, what kind of shape is it in overall? Is it a pretty decent shape?
yeah, it's good. Just mostly a facelift is all it needed. Definitely needed paint on the outside. The floors, I mean, the Boys and Girls Club really used it a lot. I mean, after school, they were doing not like teaching stuff, more like arts and crafts. It was paint everywhere. They seemed to paint the walls every so often. When we got to it, they were blue. A lot of
Just for
the
kids.
Yeah, exactly. It looked like a lot of fun went on in there. But, they had a lot of old casework in there that we wouldn't use. We ended up just keeping the, up in that top corner. We just kept the cabinet that the sink was in, but put a new countertop and new fixtures in there. The bathroom, the toilet was in bad shape. We replaced the toilet. Ceiling tiles, stuff like that. Marty helped out a lot by getting an AV part put together for him to hardwire the room with a full projector, speakers and everything. Runs about $8,000 to $9,000, and he put a part together for the price of the parts and speakers and projector.
Wow, cool.
And the teacher seems to like it. He can move it around if he wants it.
Perfect, cool.
When I came out, you could see the teacher in the background there. He was in there, and I talked to him a bit. So far, so good. He likes it a lot, and he's got access to the backfield. It's a lot closer to the backfield. Unfortunately, Bearfield's a little bit further.
Right.
But I think so far he likes it. So, and I don't know if you remember how bad the path up to it was.
Yes.
So we had a sidewalk put in and new access to the front and the rear. The ramp in the back was swollen. The back door wasn't open because it was swollen. We replaced all the wood and put new non-skid surface on the back. Got rid of all the overhang and stuff that was there before, and then you just see a gap in the My next slide will kind of tie into why that's.
Okay.
Any more questions on that one?
No, thank you.
All right. So one thing Nicole's been asking for is a little bit more in the playground. So what our plan is, and to save on hiring an architect to make fancy drawings, I did this fancy drawing myself with Google Earth. So you can kind of see, so that area that I was referring to, the opening in that concrete, is where the approach is going to start. And it's going to be, you see that red and blue, or red, black and red, kind of looks like little pebbles. It's actually that rubber pour-in-place playground material. So it's going to be a path of that. It's going to be wheelchair accessible. So that path is all in red, and then underneath the shade structure, there'll be a big pad, and then there'll be what's called a sensory play center. And these pictures give you an idea of what it is. It's kind of a zigzag wall that has different interactive panels. One's going to be the bongos, one's going to be that gear, you're going to spin and the gears move. That one at the bottom right is a kaleidoscope, so they turn that and gives them a cool visual. One thing that's not on there, because I couldn't fit it, was it's called the color splash wheel, so that spins in different colors to show up on it. Let's see, that's actually supposed to start on Monday, the 15th, so it'll only be about a 4 or 5 day project. Minimal impact, they just clear the area for that material. The play center doesn't require major anchoring or anything like that, so it should be pretty non-intrusive, the work itself. And then in addition to that, we have a molded plastic seat swing that's going to be added to it's going to replace one of the swings there, but it's a full seat with harness and everything. So yeah, I think it's be a good addition. And then all this, we can expand on it. So as we go on, we can expand underneath the shade structure. And I'm hoping that with it underneath the shade structure, a majority of that pour-in-place stuff will last a bit longer because I don't know how well that stuff does in the sun. So, any questions on that one? Yeah, I didn't think about the contrast when I put this together. So transportation, we've always kind of wanted to so just to rewind, Napa Valley Unified handles all of our bus maintenance. They provide our drivers. Well, we have one driver. We own the vehicle. And for the longest time, Napa hasn't really had the ability to provide any kind of transportation. But recently I was contacted by Terry, their director, and the driver is available. So I'll just go over this so you can see what that actually says is NVUSD to provide local field trip transportation. So some of the parameters we're using the driver that drives in the morning and in the afternoon. So those field trips need to take place in that time, 8:30 to about 2:30. If it's an early release day, they need to be back about 20 minutes prior because he's got to get into the elementary school parking lot, start accepting kids. Based on charter services, because Napa Valley is only charging us an hourly rate, it's our bus, so it's over an 80% savings over prior buses, so it should be huge. I know that CEF is pretty excited about that too, with the field trips. The only problem is that doesn't really solve the athletics transportation costs because that driver is not going to be able to work after hours, and Napa doesn't have a driver that can drive after hours. So we've offered to our special ed drivers that we have to drive for athletics, and we have one special ed driver whose schedule accommodates that. She's back in time to leave for sporting events, and she's driven quite often since that started. And then our other special ed driver has done one weekend football game so far, but I know that the athletics directors have done a really good job of really just trying to use the buses as much as they can, or the vans as much as they can. So hopefully that helps a little bit. We're still working on trying to solve a little bit more of the athletics transportation. So just a quick work order summary. This year our total work orders were 609. We completed 596. Those ones that aren't completed are either we're holding off on doing them or we're going to do them back into another project or something like that. The previous year was we had 52 work orders, which is still a lot, but that's a jump of 57 work orders. And then for total events, yes, thankfully they went down a bit. We went from 81 to 75 this year now. Just to explain an event, for a setup would be anything from bringing out a table to our graduations or helping with the Hunt Valley Family Center events, back to school events. So they could be real small or they can just be real big. And then just to give you an idea of work order trends and how things go for us, you see the spike in August, and then we come to November, December is a little bit of a spike because we're starting right before Christmas break. But if you see in May through August of this year, our work orders jumped. I think we did 242 work orders came in from May to August. So definitely makes for a busy summer and a busy start to the year. So, any questions on that?
Yep.
And then last but not least, our food inspections came in. We're still doing good. The Calistoga, the elementary school, dropped 0.62% from exemplary to good, but that's where we're at. Calistoga Junior High is still at 100% no deficiencies. Calistoga High School came up by 0.28. Palisades is still good, and overall our district's rating is still in the exemplary area. A majority of our deficiencies were trip hazards. I think it'll be a huge improvement on our scores once those trip hazards are taken care of. And I go to regular risk management meetings from our insurance company, and a lot of the school districts have been using a company called Precision Concrete Cutting, and they'll come out, evaluate your site, and they'll note anything over, I want to say it's a half inch, maybe it's a quarter inch of the lip. And their technique is much better than a lot of the ones you see where it's ground down and really rough and not very even. It's a perfectly smooth surface. The cut is at an 88 slope, so it's not going to be a drastic slope or anything. And yeah, they'll come out and evaluate and kind of give me a breakdown of what's really bad and what needs to be done now. So overall, it should really help our scores. I mean, our scores are great already. Questions?
I would like to say the miracle work they're doing on our football field with all the bandages they're putting on it is phenomenal. During practice, I'm always baffled at how it's going to look during game time, and you continue to do a great job.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Our crew is, I couldn't answer that.
I also want to say thank you for all the work that you and your staff do around the schools, and all the assistance to the events that the family centers put together. And they worked really, really hard. Last August, when we had a big event, and we have, over 1,100 people in that field, and it was just amazing all the help that we get, Kyle, Jesus, and all of them are just wonderful. Thank you.
Nicely done, Chris. Thank you. 6.4 LCAP student achievement results. Mr. Michael Francesco.
All right. So we're going to present on 2018 CAS data tonight. I can say that we're very excited to have the data. These are good markers that inform us on how we're doing with teaching and learning. These were released to the public last Wednesday, so they're pretty much hot off the presses, so it's exciting to have the data to be able to discuss this. As a reminder, CAS is the statewide assessment system. The two primary tests that we have are the English language arts and mathematics tests. These are tests we give to students in grades 3 through 8, and then we give again in grade 11. When students take the test and get their scores back, they'll have scores ranging from level 1 to 4, standard not met to standard exceeded. For the purposes of tonight's presentation, it's important to recognize that what we're looking at is students in the level 3 to 4 range, or students who are proficient or performing above the line. So as you see percentages show up tonight, we're really looking at students that are performing in the level 3 or 4 range. So we'll start with Calistoga Elementary School, and we'll talk about English language arts. And it's exciting to see 4 years of data at this point. it's nice to be able to kind of report out on trends. So this is last year was the 4th year we took the test and received scores. So we can look at 4 years worth of data. And what you see here really is a lot of cause for celebration on this slide. We've made 8 percentage points of gains over 4 years, 4% since last year. If you see that red line there, that's the county average score, and we're lagging behind that score. I can say that I'm not entirely surprised, especially at the elementary level, in that we have the highest percentage of English learners of any school in the county, or any district in the county. We know there's a direct correlation between English learner status. It's just really hard for students who are learning the English language to perform hard on what is a very complex test. So I'm not entirely surprised to see us lagging a little bit, but to see continual growth is a cause for celebration. On the math scores from the elementary school, we see slow, steady growth, 3% over the last 4 years, 1% since last year, and have been above the county average for the last 3 years. For Calistoga Junior Senior High School, we did break the scores out. It's one combined school, but for tonight's purposes, breaking it out into looking at the junior high school versus the high school scores, I think was valuable to look at the data in that way. And when we look at English Language Arts for grades 7 and 8, we see tremendous growth, 23 percentage points over 4 years, and 13 percentage points over the last year. When you look at mathematics scores in grades 7 and 8, you do see some decline. This is the first slide where we see some negative growth, 2% loss over 4 years and 3% over since last year. What I can say to glean some positive off of this slide is if you take our average score over those 4 years, we are just slightly below the county average. So I think the overall performance in mathematics here is positive. I think when you see a downward trend, that's cause for reflection, and obviously this is somewhere where we're going to look very carefully at 2019 to see if the work we're doing gets us to trend back upward. We'll have a couple slides on grade 11. Something to point out is this is the only place where we are just looking at one grade level by itself. And when you look at one grade level by itself in a small school, it's kind of susceptible to cohort issues, where you have maybe 1 year where we're a little stronger than the other. So what you'll see on both of these slides is we had groups in 2015 and 17 that were very strong, relatively. So I wouldn't pay as much attention to the the ups and downs here. The overall, I think you average these scores out and you find that we're right below the county average, though it does feel like we're trending downward. So another area where we need to have reflection on what happens in 2015. And then in grade 11 mathematics, this, I'll be honest, this is the slide that gives me the most cause for reflection. We see these cohort issues where we have stronger years in 2015 and 17, but the overall performance, no matter kind of how you look at that data, is low. It's quite a bit below the county average. So I think when we look at grade 11 mathematics, it's going to be somewhere where we're going to have to really focus in on. We don't want to over-test our students, but it's unfortunate to not be able to have that information from 9th and 10th grade. We test our students in 8th grade, and then not begin until 11th grade. So when you see this data, it makes you wonder, what happened in 9th and 10th grade? So I think this is a place where we really want to make sure that we're doing a good job of using our benchmark data at the school sites, and that we're taking a hard look at what's happening in those off years. Otherwise we have these gaps, and we wonder, right? When did we start to lose progress? We're going to look at some subgroup performance tonight, and I think this is the one thing from No Child Left Behind that I can really say we value, that we learn, is that you can't be satisfied with the performance of a school overall. So let's say you're performing well, you can't be satisfied purely with that. You need to make sure that each group within your school is performing well. And so we're going to take a look at different ways to look at our subgroup data, and I think you'll see that there are some things we can really celebrate, and then there's going to be some stuff we really need to reflect on. And so this is district-wide performance on English Language Arts. And as we look at it, I can tell you my view on the positive takeaway is typically you'll see quite a bit of an achievement gap between socioeconomic disadvantaged students and school-wide scores. We don't really see that here. we see a slight difference. And I think that's worth noting. Frustratingly, we see a discrepancy between the scores of our white students and our Hispanic students. But I think across the state of California, we've all as educators done work to address this, and it's frustratingly persistent. If I could find any positive in this slide, I will say that when students are with us at the elementary school, when they first join us and we look at the data, you see a very big discrepancy between the performance of our white students and our Hispanic students. Over time, as you see them at the junior senior high school, that gap is smaller. And I think it's fair to say that the achievement gap in our district right now, while it exists, does decrease over time. This is still English language arts, district-wide. It's just a different set of subgroups that I think are worth calling out. And I'm sorry to use the abbreviations there. For RFEP, when we're referring to reclassified students that came into our district as English learners, then at some point they reclassified as English-speaking and English-only students. Our RFEP or reclassified students are performing at a very, very high level. At the high school, junior high school, they're basically even with their peers, which is remarkable. It means that if you come into our district as an English learner and you reclassify, you ultimately perform at a very high level. And then I think the real cause for reflection is that our students who don't reclassify, our long-term or our English learners, our long-term ELs, the students that stay EL, are performing very poorly. I think that's going to be something we'll look hard at. So we're going to look at the same subgroups real quickly in mathematics. It's similar data, but these are two different tests. In mathematics, we continue to see that our socioeconomic disadvantaged students are performing nearly equal with the school-wide scores. The achievement gap does exist between white and Hispanic students, though it does exist to a lesser degree at junior, senior high school. Our RFEP students are performing very well compared to the school-wide. We didn't have any English learners testing in mathematics in the 11th grade. So this slide's got a lot going on, but it's a really important slide, and we're going to go through it slowly because it's really quite significant. And this is the last slide we'll look at as far as data goes. So what you see here is our district versus the county on subgroup performance. And I'm going to point out some things that I think are real celebrations here, and then some things I think we need to give some thought to. Our students who are white versus our students who are Hispanic, we know there's an achievement gap. But I think if you look at that, and you look at the blue, which is us, the green, which is us, and the blue, which is the county, our achievement gap between those racial groups is much smaller than the county average. Ours is around 20-point difference. Not something to celebrate in and of itself at all. But the county average is 30%, 30 points. We have a 10-point difference. Our reclassified students are outperforming the school-wide average, which is not the case countywide. And major difference between our socioeconomic disadvantaged students who are basically performing near school-wide average, whereas most schools in the county have this big difference between their students who are socioeconomic disadvantaged and the school-wide scores. I think all of that is cause for celebration. And I think the cause for reflection is when you look at our English learner students and our special education students. Like all districts in the county, we have a major gap there, but I think ours almost is to a larger degree. It is, I can say, even though the scores were just released last Wednesday, in our early conversation, this is already a very important topic that we've been reflecting on. Why are those scores like that? And what are we going to do about it? What are we doing? What are we going to do? So real quickly, I've been through these, but I think it's important to call them out, make sure we hear them. Areas of strength, we have continual growth at the elementary school in both English language arts and mathematics, junior high school English language arts. We've surpassed the county average in elementary school mathematics and junior high ELA. We have minimal achievement gap between socioeconomic disadvantaged students and school achievement. The achievement gap between white and Hispanic students declines as students progress from grades 3 to 11 and is smaller than the county gap, and our overall performance of reclassified students is quite strong. Our areas for growth. We've seen declining scores in junior high in grade 11 math and grade 11 ELA. The overall achievement level in grade 11 math is lower than we want it to be. There's that persistent gap between white and Hispanic student achievement, and the overall performance of English language learners and special education students is lower than where we want it to be. And then lastly tonight, I think it is important to call out where this data falls in our district's plan for continuous improvement. When we see this data, we fit it into the plan that we have to improve our scores and the programs we've already put in place. And so I think it's important to call those out. And I'm not going to go through the whole LCAP. That would take a while. But I do want to go through some of the new actions, because I think you're going to see a lot of the new actions will feel like they coincide with some of the things we see. We've added an academic intervention specialist at the elementary school who's working with students who we've identified as needing additional support. We've added a strategic math class at the junior senior high school through the addition of an additional full-time teacher. We've added a special day class at the Calistoga Elementary School to work specifically with our highest need special education students. We've added a library media technician at the junior senior high school who does some work in the day and then some work outside of the day, helping students after school. We've implemented district-wide areas communication. We're still rolling it out, but we do hope that that leads to improved communication, not just between the district and families, but teachers and families, as we want to inform families of what's happening in the classroom and when there are concerns with informing families early. We've added a summer school mathematics class for grades 7 and 8, summer school ELD program for English learners. We've expanded our college and career program. And in general, like I said, it's exciting to have the data. We can talk anecdotally about how we're doing, but to have the data to really dig into, I can say it's been enjoyable for me to get into it, to see where we're strong and where we have areas for growth. And I can take any questions if you have questions or comments.
I do, but I'll
Go ahead.
okay, I thank you for making this report as pleasant as possible. But in math, in regards to math, our seventh graders are 79% not meeting the standards. 8th graders, 74% not meeting the standards. As a whole, in English, we are 60% not meeting the standards. And in English, we are at 66% not, and in math, 66% not meeting the standards. If a student had brought these grades to a teacher, they would be failed. They would fail the test. I'm thankful for the interventions and all that, but I feel that we really need to focus on this. And the achievement gap between the white and the Hispanic student is still 2 levels off, I believe, until the new dashboard comes out. And I find no cause for celebration, but that's for concern. I thank you. I feel that the county isn't a bar that we're looking for, because we only draw from 1 junior high and 1 elementary school. We should be doing better than that. And I would hope that we would focus our energy in providing these kids the education that they deserve, that they can come to the statewide test and perform that. Because,
Sure, if I can respond just a little bit to that.
Absolutely.
So, as I look at the data, I try to give it a balanced treatment. I do look for those places to celebrate, and those places where we need to put more focus. One thing you called out that it's honestly, it's frustrated me for a long time when it comes to how standardized tests are treated, is with that percentage of achievement. When we went to school, and I think it's still the case, an A is 90%. We've kind of trained our kids to do that. It's 90%. An A needs to be 80%, right? That's not where they put the cut lines on standardized tests. They put them much, much lower. And I've always worried too, as students take these tests and you get more students wrong, more questions wrong than you're used to getting wrong. Like an A student's used to getting 9 questions right, and 1 wrong. That's just not how these are functioning. That's how they build these tests. It's not to say that 60%, 60% could be a strong score. It depends on where the state's putting the bar. Which I've tried to with that county line is try to contextualize it a little bit in comparison to the county. You can draw a line for the state, which is pretty much identical to the county. So I would encourage us to look for those places for strengths and be honest about it. I would encourage us to look for those places for growth and be honest about it. Those last slides on the achievement gap, they're hard to look at, right? They're really hard to look at, but I think it's important that we're very transparent with each other about where we're strong and where we need to grow.
Any other questions?
you came. I guess it was probably 4 years ago. They brought this CASP test to the school board and had us take it. Remember that? You don't remember that? It was so complicated and so convoluted that we were kind of like, wow, that's kind of crazy, because 2 screens are going both ways.
Yes, now I remember that.
So how comfortable do you feel, I know it's your first year here, but how comfortable do you feel that part of this isn't that it's a little bit of a complicated thing to process on a computer? I don't even like to take the DMV test on a computer. I still ask for the paper. I just was curious. I know we did a lot of preparing the students to take it. I'm just curious.
Sure, and I don't know, my brief time here that I can speak as well as maybe the site administrator to some of that. I can say that I do think we're well poised in the sense that we are a one-to-one computing district. Our students are on technology from a really early age with us, so I don't know that that's an issue. What I can tell you, just my opinion of this test, it is extremely rigorous. And I think the idea behind it is, hey, we build a very rigorous test. And our students, and we can get at some point our students to achieve on that test, we will really have accomplished something. We will be producing students that are really able to think critically, right? But this test, we have to recognize, is incredibly difficult, especially in relation to the last test that we took, where we gave as educators the CST, which tested procedural knowledge. That is not this test. And I think that's a great exercise. I think it's a great exercise for parents to go through. Go to the SBAC site, take the practice test in 8th grade mathematics. I challenge you. I do. It's very rigorous. And again, if we can get our kids to do it, there you go. That's what we should do. The state has set the bar very high, and it's our job to meet it, and we should. But I think to recognize that the test is difficult, in my opinion, that's the issue. I don't know that it's necessarily a technology issue. It's a very rigorous test. It's our job to prepare kids. In my opinion, when you look at how we're doing, I do think there are some real areas. There are some real areas to celebrate today. Because we are well above the county average in a couple places, and that's places where we should feel good as a district, our teachers should feel good, our students should feel good, our community should feel good. And then there are places where we need to look at and say, no, that's not good enough. And we need to make sure that our action steps within the LCAP are there to address these things.
I would like to add that all the schools take this test. We're not special. This test is special to us. And California as a state ranked very low in national average, as well as globally. And so I think we need to push our kids more and challenge them. And this is very challenging. I thank you very much, though. And thank you for paying that speech.
Could I answer part of Julie's question too?
Of course.
So Illuminate is the software that we use for students, and Craig can chime in here, but teachers will be getting benchmarks that look very similar to the CAS, so that students are given an opportunity to be familiar with the environment. Because I tested I proctored back in 2015, and it was very hard for them to navigate, but they're getting that practice now on their benchmarking. So that's one small piece of it.
We had our staff go through the test also last year. It's very difficult to have just some of our staff members. And so it was good practice when we see this. Mark right in the areas that we need to hone in on and improve. And one of those areas is how we keep the motivation to do well on the tests when we're in 11th grade or screening in 11th grade year, without just pushing all C's as you take the test. How do we keep them really engaged to show that this is important, it's a reflection of what we know to be able to do, what our school can know.
I think it'll be interesting this year too, because we've implemented so many programs this year, which I'm proud of. Also, I think that we have the 11th graders this year had the option to take whichever math they wanted in junior high. For the 11th graders next year, do not have that option. So you're going to have varying levels. Because I'm curious about what level of math they're testing in 11th grade. Because you have 11th graders that are taking calculus, and you have 11th graders who are in it'll be really interesting to see next year.
And we have some students, because when we require to do math, to algebra and geometry and 10th, and then they have no math for the whole year. And then you're asked to take a test and you're going to play.
if there is a benchmark test that the district or the administrators can use that follows grade levels through their grade levels so that we can see what progress looks like in this one cohort instead of looking at, like you said, the 11th grade is a different group of kids every year. But how do we tell if that 2015 group of 11th graders actually did some progress before they got out of here, or did we send them on their way with, 8% proficiency? I think as a parent, that would be something I would like to see.
Yeah, and one thing I think we can point to is that even outside of this testing system, we have our own internal benchmarking system, which is really important in the off years. So grades 10 and 11, we're going to take this test, grade 12. So that's one test that we can control and track kids the entire way through. And I know there's work happening at the sites. There's teachers who are engaging in dialogue around those benchmarks. And I think that's something we can look at. If we want to present it, we can present the benchmark.
If I might add, this is strictly an idea. If we were to pay for the SAT and ACT test for the students, we would have that information of our 12th graders if they're college ready. Would that be correct? Would we hold that information?
Say that again? Sorry.
And
SAT, it's a little different. It's a little different test. That's the thing. I mean, this is a test which tests a certain set of skills. The SAT is a different test. We can talk about it as well, but it is a different test than the academic aspect test.
And to answer your question, Mark, would you pay for all 10th graders to take the SAT?
Yes.
I think it's also important to recognize the value, again, in our benchmark assessments, and we're doing that throughout all the grades. And once we give those assessments, then the teachers look at the data and adjust their curriculum. I think that there's more value in that than once-a-year testing, most definitely testing.
And our district, we support is paying for those teachers to have a day to look at the data instead of time after school or have time. So they're delving into the benchmark and saying,
So I'll make just a couple of closing comments.
Sure.
When I look at this data, I am optimistic. I see the strengths, and where we have deficiencies, I see that we have LCAP actions to address them. I think we also know that these actions that we've introduced take time. So we look at them this year, and we reevaluate this test at the end of the year, when we're here next year. But I am optimistic. I think we've got great teachers, we've got good school culture. We're positioned to make growth, and I think we have the right things in place to do it. So there are causes for concern. But when I look at this data, I'm excited. I'm excited to put the presentation together to share it with you, and I leave here with a sense of optimism.
One optimist or another, go get it.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. 6.5, Calistoga Elementary School Principal Report.
Okay, so for Calistoga Elementary, we did finish up our first round of release days. We did different structure where we did a half a day per grade. And we, again, it's been echoed tonight, we did look at the data, we looked at the screening data, we started to drill down student by student and really what was our plan moving forward. Also want to let you know that we are going to again have the Halloween Safety Carnival. Halloween does fall on Wednesday this year, so we're going to be using the Boys and Girls Club. We're going to be doing it a little bit earlier. In addition, we're going to be having a costume exchange. We're going to have it on 2 different dates where we're going to divide by K3 and 4-6. We worked pretty closely on this as PTA because we wanted to give adequate time for students to look at costume options, be able to try them on. And so that was a change that we had from last year. Last week was Yosemite. First of all, thank you so much for your continued support of that program for our 6th grade students and those of you who have experienced the Yosemite program. It is a week-long trip for our 6th grade students. They go on a challenge hike, which is usually Bridal Veil Falls. This year actually they did Bridal Veil and Yosemite Falls because of the weather. It did rain there, we'll talk about that in a minute. And they also did the infamous spider caves. And they also did an ecology lesson looking at the overall health of the freshwater system by looking at what kind of insects were living there. And we did have rain on Wednesday and Thursday. I was very grateful to have our Aries communication system so that the week before we started to really push out messages to the 6th grade parents saying, it's going to be raining. We're going to need to, you're going to need to get a poncho. We did a poncho and a jacket and a sleeping bag check so that no students didn't have the correct equipment. We also were able to get loaner sleeping bags so students could come forward and say, oh, I need a sleeping bag or oh, I need a poncho. And so we set that up as well. And I was very grateful to be able to have that communication system to just start pushing out those warnings. Then also last week, or actually the week before last, I was in Yosemite myself, so there was a little bit of time continuum there. So the week before last, we had our first rules rodeo in a while. And basically the purpose of a rules rodeo is to explicitly teach expectations in areas of the playground where we're seeing students just have challenges. And so in order to have this happen, we had a release day of primary and intermediate teachers and paraeducators who came and they looked at the overall discipline data and looked at the playground map, and they basically identified the areas of, oh, you know what, we really need to reteach these areas to the students. And so those areas were the tetherball area, the basketball area, wall ball, volleyball, foursquare, and the play structure. And we ended up dividing up Rules Rodeo over 2 days. And the staff got into it and wore Western wear. And I had my Western wear on as well as Mr. Valenzuela. And we took K through 6 all through these various stations. And what we did immediately notice after the Rules Rodeo was students taking more risks in playing games that they weren't familiar with, specifically tetherball. Tetherball is kind of an intimidating game when you have a ball on a rope that's flying around full force. And so we were impressed with that. And we also noticed that students started to have what we call common vocabulary. So they would come forward and say, hey, you know, this student stepped over the line. I asked the judge what should happen. So see, they're starting to use that kind of common vocabulary. And so it makes it easier for our paraeducators to really kind of sort through and figure out what's going on. The other benefit was that our paraeducators were really instrumental in facilitating the kind of expectations in each of those areas. And so it gave students the opportunity to see the paraeducator leading in that area, and then when they go out to recess, they can then engage with that paraeducator and ask those questions. So we were very excited about the Rules Rodeo. And then we are this year going through restorative practices, and so our trainer, Maria Freeberman-Smith, has been coming to our site on Wednesdays to mentor with staff. She will sit in on restorative circle meetings. She'll meet with yard supervisors, also observe what's going on at recess. So we are continuing with that as well. Any questions? Thank you, Nicole. All right, 6.6, Calistoga Junior Senior High School Principal's Report and WASC Visiting and Community Report.
Thank you. Easier to hold this way. Attached in your board report was the committee's complete entire report. It was very, very long. And so each month what I like to do is just break it into subsections so it's a little more easily to digest, and we can talk about each one of those. And as we move through the year, you'll see some of those areas that in this report today that's continually working on, we'll have more of a formative plan. So as the year progresses and we involve our leadership team and our different committees. So category A is organization, vision, and purpose, governance, leadership, staff, and resources. We talk about the strengths there, they're outlined, and then the key issues, and what we've started to do, and what has been done to address each one of those key issues. And then I can answer questions about that when I'm done each one of those. I'd like to go down to LCAP Goal 2, provide a safe, healthy, positive environment. We had a challenge day, and I don't think anyone was able to participate. Is that correct?
My morning.
Okay, so I thought it was a really well done. Kudos to our counselor, Mr. Craig Morales. Kudos to our road areas and our seroptimists who donated pretty much the bulk of the monies that went into. And then also they provided a lot of support. There was a lot of seroptimists and a lot of Rotarians there. It is a very emotional 2 days, and we had some staff members there, and we had some key people from the community. Zach from Mud Valley was there. We had some of our Mentis therapists involved. And so from that, a group was forming to, what do we do next? What happens after that? And it'll be called the Be the Change Club. And Regina from Community Valley and Zach are heading it up, and we also have a partnership from our LGBTQ Connect, and then in hopes too of, we have a high demand for need on our campus for mental health. We have a long waiting list of kids waiting to get therapeutic help, and so we're going to be advocating for that as much as possible. So we just need more therapist hours on our campus. It's come to light. We did have to do quite a few CPS reports, which you think, well, that's bad, but through the process we learned things that maybe were being hidden before that shouldn't have been hidden, and now that can be addressed by people. As you know, social emotional parts can affect what happens with learning at school. And if a child comes with so many things on their mind, it's difficult to really sit in a classroom thinking about all these other things. So we appreciate the therapeutic support that you've provided so far, but we will be advocating for more therapeutic time. Not to steal the thunder from Nayeli, because that's what she'll be talking about, but I feel like we had a very successful homecoming week. I think one of the things that was a contributing factor of it was that this year we decided to allocate a section in the junior high for leadership. So we have a leadership class this year, and Ms. Heck is our leadership class teacher for junior high, along with our new leadership teacher, Mr. Hartel. I think the two of them have been great together with coming up with ideas to involve staff during the week and students, and even one of our new English teachers, she went out and bought t-shirts and had all the 7th grade students tie-dye them, and then she bought a bunch of green swag, which was kind of fun, and so there was a lot of enthusiasm, and really a little bit of healthy competition, which is nothing wrong with that, right? It's good to have that, so the kids seem really enthusiastic. And if you went to the football game Friday night, we could have used some more bleachers. We had a huge crowd, which was really kind of a carryover from the whole week. So and that's part of one of our WALK's action items, is to build more school spirit and make that more on campus, because the more students feel an involvement, of course, the more they're going to try on these tests like the CAS, right? They have a sense that they want to make sure they show what our school can do. And Nayeli will talk a little bit more about that also. And then increased parent engagement, goal 3. We've held our second ELAC meeting. We went to the last Wednesday night. We are having another meeting for parents who want to come hear more about WASC. It'll be this Thursday at 6 p.m. So I invite you to come if you want to hear more information. And our site council is moving forward. Our ELAC members who are there, we have a couple parents step forward and say they would be a part of site council. So I don't know if you know, but our site councils are relying upon having more parents than there are certificated and classified staff on it. So if there's 2 teachers and a classified staff and myself, we need to have more parents than that. So sometimes that can be difficult, but our ELAC parents stepped up, and I'm really excited about that.
Any questions?
Yeah, so if we have a bunch of kids that get decent, how do we expedite that process? That's
For tutoring?
no, from Challenge Day.
Children's mental health.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to do our best. That's a very good question, Mark. So we met as a post-Challenge Day meeting. It's called our core meeting. We meet every other week. And we take a look at, because we do have quite a few parents who put in requests, and it's difficult to then say to them, sorry, we can't, you're seeing these things at home, but we don't have the therapeutic help because there's just not enough hours on the campus. I don't know what the answer is to that. Ms. Craig Morales has been very busy trying to meet with all the students who are on the list. We decided to divide them up, and so myself and Ms. Baldenegger will be also trying to meet with some of those students. But we aren't trained practitioners in that area. So I know that the Boys and Girls Club might have some monies that might help out with probably, with getting some support in that way too. And then our LGBTQ Connect group has some support too for therapeutic services. But in general, having a waiting list of over 27 students waiting to get help is pretty big, and that's a lot of students.
So Mark, I can talk about that as well. I shared with Craig that I have a meeting scheduled for this Friday to meet with Zach at the Family Center to talk about how we can meet these kids' needs.
All right, thank you. 6.7, Lealie, student representative reports.
So this week was homecoming week, and our ASB class has been working on making the homecoming week very special for the whole school since like the second day of school. And it came out to be a great success, and everyone enjoyed it. And this year's homecoming would be involved all around California, and the seniors had Bay Area, juniors had LA, sophomores had Santa Cruz, and the freshmen had Coachella, which is the biggest music and art festival in California. This was actually really special for the seniors, like any homecoming week, but more for us because it was a way for us to show love to the place that we all kind of grew up in. And homecoming week was kicked off with the girls in our club and ended up tonight with the boys volleyball, and that was the first time that ASB has ever combined both, and it created a great buzz around the school, and everyone enjoyed it because it was something new and exciting. As well as we had rain, so it was kind of hard for us to do a lot of things, but we did a dance competition. Everyone came out and danced even with the rain, which was really awesome and super funny. So for the rally on Friday, we all came together and did a bunch of activities that involved everyone, and the floats were a great example of all the hard work and all the excitement that went into them, and each class did which all showed how much fun and how great everyone of a team they were, and they all came out really, really good, which was super surprising because there's always like one class and everybody did a really good job, but this year all of them went amazing. And we also continued the tradition of making homecoming week a competition, see which class won and had the most spirit. This year, the freshmen won the whole competition. And finally, our football team did an amazing job and showed how much they've been working and how hard. And we're so proud of them. Finally, the dance took place after the football game, and it was a perfect night and a perfect dance wrap up week 2018.
Oh, good. Great.
Queen was Catherine, Romance, and the King was Bob.
thank you to Julie for opening her house for Flow Building. And then it's across the street from the competitor house in the
It's a party at my house.
Way to take one for the team, Julie. Good done. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. 6.8, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you. Under goal number 1, I'm going to be bringing the local indicators for the California School Dashboard to the board for your approval at the November meeting. And I'm going to let you know that the public release of the 2018 fall dashboard results is going to be by December 3rd. So we'll be able to look at those as well on December 10th. So we'll have more student information, more student achievement information. Under LCAP goal number 2, a safe, healthy, and positive school environment. As a follow-up to the comments that both Craig and Nayeli just made, I attended many homecoming events, and this is by far the best year I've ever seen in my career. So it was an outstanding job. I was impressed with the organization, the appropriateness of the activities, and the student and staff's school spirit was amazing. It was everything. So kudos to Mr. Hartel and Ms. Heck and the leadership classes for all of their efforts. And then I want to let you know that today I participated in the Napa County Office of Emergency Services partner meeting. It was a phone conference for the iPause wireless emergency system that's going to be tested tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. So Paula has already sent out a message to all of our staff to be prepared for that. There were people from all over the county participating in that, from the school districts as well as the Sheriff's Department, Police Department. So once that test is completed tomorrow, OES is going to send out surveys to all of us who participate, and then we'll have a follow-up phone conference to have a debriefing to see what needs to be changed in the system. Under LCAP goal number 3, increasing parent engagement. Just as an update, you've heard Aries Communication mentioned by Nicole tonight. We continue to try to increase the number of parents who are using that system. So we brainstormed today, the principals and I and Paula. We sent home one letter, and then we also sent out an opt-in message, but we still have a lot of parents who are not accessing the system. And so we were trying to figure out how can we help them with that access. So we had decided that we were going to be distributing the information again in the school newsletter, so that'll go out to the parents in written form. And then our principals are going to help our parents at both the ELAC and PTA meetings, try to help them if they're not comfortable, accessing it online, that we will walk them through those steps. Because the system is important, not just for day-to-day communication, but also in the event of emergencies. So we're hoping to increase our numbers. So if you have any suggestions for us, we're happy to listen to them. And that's all I have time.
Any questions? Okay, move on to the consent calendar. This requires a roll call vote. All actions proposed for the consent agenda are deemed routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless any member of the board, audience, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. So looking for, where are we at? Two contracts are looking for a motion for.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. More pages in these these agendas, yes. All right, this is a roll call. Clerk Epplishon. Trustee Lopez. Trustee Reed. Trustee Galindo. And President Maxfield. Aye. All right. Action items. Protocol for action items includes a staff presentation, questions from the board, public input, deliberation by the board, and voting by the board. During public input, there will be a 3-minute time limit per person. 8.2, Memorandum of Understanding with Calistoga Promise. Carla, I see you're here, and Aaron.
So we tried to put as specific information as we possibly could into the board agenda document, but I did ask Carla, and Maria's here as well, if you have any questions to ask of them in particular. And answer them. And I also need to give credit to Jenna Burrows, who was responsible for doing a lot of research, especially behind the funding mechanism, and Ms. serving as a fiscal agent, and that has been presented to legal counsel as well.
How about just a quick update?
So quick update is that we have entered into MOUs with the City of Calistoga and the Chamber of Commerce. So we have basically 4 sort of pillars, and they're focused on helping us with 1 or 2 of those. So empowering families, building an internship program, the city and the chamber are on board with that, providing financial support, that would be the scholarship piece of it, and then to mentor every graduate. We've recently been in meetings with Seroptimist, who are interested in helping us to look at some mentoring possibilities and protocols. We have a steering committee of 4, and we're looking for a 5th person. Me, Maria DiGiulio, Wendy Garcia, a 2013 graduate who's now working in adult education at Santa Rosa Junior College, is excited to be able to come and do that. And also Karina from the family side, Vasquez. She's a founding parent from the Oakland Promise, and her son was just hired by the Oakland Promise, so we have access to his, yeah. So that's kind of where we are at this point, moving forward, and asking you all to be the fiscal agent so that we can start collecting donations.
I have a statement and a couple questions from me. First of all, the Promise program is something that just hit home, hit my heart. I went to the Promise Net with you, funded it myself. This is a cause that I'm behind. And one thing that I got from the Promise Net was, we got one shot at this. This is a small town. This is a very small town. And if we're going to ask the town to fund it, we need to do it right. So a couple of questions I have. What is the legal status of the Promise, Calistoga Promise?
So the Calistoga Promise was advised by legal counsel to avoid creating a nonprofit if we could run certain aspects like fiscal agency through another organization. And it was suggested, first of all, and I think we heard this at Promise Net a lot, was, do you have an education foundation? And we do, and we did approach CEF, and currently their bylaws do not allow for funding scholarships. That's just not been their emphasis or their focus. As we all know, they're focused on enriching students' educational experiences while they're still enrolled K through 12. So it was suggested that we turn to our school district because of the level of transparency and the audit process. So that we felt strongly that that would be more comfortable for donors than an unknown entity that had just been newly created.
Yes, that was one of the advice was given, and also an advice was given to parallel with the school and the community and form a board and form a nonprofit. So in this MOU, it says the district role in supporting the Promise is essentially to continue to provide the resource and the experiences already being provided district-wide, including the College of Career Coordinator. Is that a grant? Is that funded by grant money?
The College and Career Center?
Correct.
Yeah, for this year, not the entire thing. So 0.4%, and then the NAPA Learns gave us the grant. So over the next 3-year period, the amount of money that they are donating to the district will lessen, and in the 4th year, we would be funding it entirely on our own.
So the district role in supporting the Promise is essentially to continue to provide the resources and experience already being provided by the College and Career Coordinator, who can work with the youth, can work and use the resources of the Promise to fulfill the goals, college and career, the goals of the College and Career Center. What resources will we be using from the Promise? What percentage of funds raised will go directly to kids' education? Will there be any administration fees? Do you have bylaws? And who establishes the committee? And what is the criteria for the students? It says all students. Is that how it says including?
Yes, so when we say all students, we're talking about last dollar scholarship to fund any post-secondary education. Eligibility criteria, so they're all eligible as long as they're enrolling in post-secondary education. But one of the things we learned at Promise Net was how many years does a student need to be in the district in order to receive 100% funding? or, 100% of their financial aid gap being filled. Because what you want to avoid is people coming in for junior and senior year and taking advantage of the promise. Does that make sense? Now, in terms of funding my position, none of that would come from the promise. So Napa Learns seeds initiatives, which is what they're doing in funding my position this year. And then they, just like they did with the technology, and I think the iPads was the initial program. So they seeded, but then the district has made the commitment to continue that initiative and seek funding in other ways if necessary. But it's not the intent of the promise to fund the College and Career Center position. So to give you an example of how I've already taken advantage of the promise resources, networking. So when I hold a career fair, I can reach out to promise champions, and they're able to either refer people to be part of that career fair or come and be, participants themselves. Maria, acting as a Promise Champion last year, set up the tour over at Four Seasons. So when we talk about using resources of the Promise, it's more about networks and those kinds of resources. Did that answer your question about the funding, Mark? For both my position and the scholarships?
Yeah, it's just the words in here real vague, and I would hope that we could clean that up a little bit. I definitely don't want to give away paying for kids in college and vocational training, and I definitely would like to see some sureties that these kids last longer. A true promise to pay for the first 2 years. Tennessee, the whole as a state, is doing that, and Kalamazoo is going above and beyond that. And boards change, superintendents got to have your and change, and so I would like to see something more solid in there. A legal description of the Promise program, I think would be great. Bylaws, something to hammer it out, because when you go and asking people for money and all that money doesn't go to where it should be, I'm trying to get some.
So I think that there are a couple of really important issues there. And one, in terms of bylaws, we will be working on that with the steering committee. All of the money that's being raised by the Promise would be going to scholarships. But one of the things I heard over and over, not just from PromiseNet, but when I talked to people, the Oakland Promise existed for 6 years before they ever funded a scholarship. So what I'm hearing from people who've launched these successful Promise programs is that the internships, the mentorships, the empowering families has got to come first, because money is necessary and insufficient.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
So in terms of hammering out those details, we've been focusing on those other, so that when we are asking people for money, we can say, we know that our kids are going to be successful because we're providing these supports to them all the way through.
Oh, I totally agree. The only similarity between between us and Oakland is just California. And so we only have a graduating class of less than 50. And so this is very doable here.
Sure.
We just,
Yeah.
I feel we need more.
I'm not saying we need to wait
Yeah.
6 years, just
Right.
understanding that all of that front loading, as we talk about in education, is so important. Not just in terms, our most important piece would be so that the children are successful when they go, but in creating that confidence in donors.
So who forms the committee?
Who chose to be on the committee?
Who will form the committee as the committee chair seats change?
So the steering committee will, I was looking at sample bylaws, and steering committees often, in fact, Stockton, Promise Zone, their steering committee approves and appoints any oncoming steering committee members, so that you create a continuity from one steering committee to the next. So, but the current committee is made up of people who said, okay, I'll commit to getting that started.
So in general, the other Promise organizations, are they set up as nonprofits, or is it just a different process?
Some are and some aren't. Maria, do you remember when the Oakland Promise finally did their nonprofit? It was several years, wasn't it? When they did it?
In what year?
Or, yeah,
No, I don't remember.
I don't remember exactly, but that was something that they,
Some start out as.
I
Right.
have some information on that for you.
Most
The
piggyback
Kalamazoo
on-
Promise is a nonprofit organization. They specifically ask that you do a nonprofit with the school and the community, because funding criteria has changed state to state. But yet our promise needs to remain a promise to every student, regardless of the changing of the people. That's why they say promise needs to be transparent. Everybody needs to know about it. You know, and it's got to be out there for everybody.
So it sounds to me what you're saying is sometimes you don't start off as a nonprofit, right?
No, the majority don't, and we were advised legally not to start our own 501c.
It's pretty tough.
It takes about a year. Sometimes when you get the right person, you get it done in 9 months.
Well, any other questions? We're looking for a motion to approve the MOU as presented. I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
I oppose this formula. We don't have enough information.
Moving on, 8.3 Memorandum of Understanding with Calistoga Associated Teachers. Michael.
We have an MOU here between the district and CAT to place the HOPE program after-school coordinator, the certificated salary schedule as a stipend position. The HOPE program has benefited some of our Latina students. It's a program we've had in existence. This year, we advertised it to our internal employees and there was no interest. So we'd like to post it externally. To do that in a transparent way, it's important that we advertise how much we're paying for the position. The mechanism here is to put that on a salary schedule. But it's a great program that benefits our kids. The budget source is already there in the high school, junior high school's budget, so it's not an additional expenditure. And given that, we do respectfully recommend that we approve this action.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Looking to approve the MOU as presented. Second. All in favor? Aye. Moving on, 8.4, certificated substitute salary schedule. You again.
So we're presenting a revision to the substitute salary schedule. We know we're in a substitute shortage. I think we have a little bit worse up here in Calistoga at the far end of the valley, as most of our substitute travel from within the county. When some positions don't get filled, it results in teachers covering classes or administrators covering classes, which isn't ideal. And we know we need to stay competitive with our neighboring districts. We haven't updated since 2015, so we think this will put us in a good spot to have our positions filled. It represents a $20 increase from $145 a day to $165 for our substitutes. That's when the salary schedule changed. Entails. And given that, we do respectfully recommend approval of this action item.
All right. Any questions?
Just want to be noted that the last time it was revised, it was 2013, so that's 5 years ago.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
It's time, right?
Yeah, good. Looking for a motion? Here, all in favor? Aye. 8.5, agreement with Ryland School Business Consulting.
We are still in the process of filling our director of business position, and so it's my recommendation that we approve this contract with Ryland School Business to provide a consultant in this interim period. So I'm anticipating at least a month. Maybe a little bit longer.
Okay. Any questions? Looking for a motion?
I very much motion. I'm aware of the host of the comment, very much need that.
Okay. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right. Moving on, board meeting calendar. Holy cow, November 5th and December 10th. Christmas, oh man, I'm not ready for that. Upcoming events, the Safety Carnival at CES. Is that the Boys and Girls Club? Okay. And future tentative next meeting, there's nothing, closing items. Oh, dashboard indicators and Yosemite presentation. That's always fun. That's always fun. And there's no need to go back to closed session. So I'm looking for 9.6. All in favor? Aye. Thank you for coming.